The Monkey is the hotly anticipated follow up from new auteur horror director Osgood Perkins. Perkins crashed onto the scene with the incredibly successful and well liked film Longlegs. But does The Monkey satisfy the itch of this particular horror fan? Stick around and I will let you know my thoughts on the matter. Hello, my name is Sean Morgan, and thank you for returning to the channel, or maybe you're here for the first time. Um, Welcome to the channel. I had a brief hiatus for a moment while I settled into my new living space, but here I am. I love movies, and I especially love horror movies. Osgood Perkins is one of the new horror movie creatives that everybody is talking about since his smash hit Longlegs raged through theaters in 2024. I thought that Longlegs had an amazing marketing campaign and some incredibly creepy atmosphere, but I felt that the entire thing was kind of bogged down by the rules and the lore of the universe. I was less high on long legs than seemingly everybody else in the various film nerd circles. But, I respected it for what it was, and I respected that it kind of catapulted a new, kind of fresh filmmaker into a stratosphere that kind of demands attention. The Monkey, I should also say, I've seen Gretel and Hansel from 2020, a film from Perkins that I do genuinely really like. I don't want to sound like I am calling him overrated or overhyped across the board. I actually really liked Gretel and Hansel again from 2020. I think that Perkins is extremely talented at creating unsettling atmosphere. That's, I think, his biggest strength. So I was very much looking forward to the release of The Monkey when the trailers started circulating around the multiplex. And The Monkey stars Theo James and Tatiana Maslany, as well as Elijah Wood, Rohan Campbell, Sarah Levy, and many others. The film follows twin brothers, both played by James, who find their dad's old monkey toy in the attic. Once they activate the toy, several gruesome deaths begin happening. As children, they decide to banish the toy into the wilderness. Years later, however, the titular toy monkey re enters the picture, and the twins, Bill and Hal, begin a quest to secure the artifact in an attempt to save lives. It becomes clear, though, that one twin brother is hiding something significant from the other. I won't spoil that bit of the proceedings. The film has been out for a while, but I feel like that is a twist that is better left unspoiled for the uninitiated. There's like a little bit of an extra flavor there about the twins' relationship that I don't think needs to be said. In order to kind of review the film on the whole. The film is based on a short story from Stephen King, though not one that I have read. I like Stephen King, but I'm not someone who's read everything that he's ever written. This review will cover the film itself only and how it works. So I am operating on those terms and those terms alone. I'm not really equipped to speak on whether it's a faithful adaptation of the original work because I haven't read the original work. So just be aware of that going in. If you're looking for a sort of kind of one-to-one comparison book to movie, that's not really what I'm interested in here. So I thought that The Monkey was very solid. Just to kind of put a blanket kind of statement, thesis statement here, I thought it was very solid, but ultimately a little bit flawed. And, that's perfectly okay. Not every movie needs to be perfect. The movie's tone is that of a dark comedy, which is actually something I really enjoyed. Theo James has an amazing kind of dry delivery as far as comedy goes. And, a very commanding voice too. I really just enjoyed listening to him. He's certainly up to the task as far as eliciting laughs and delivering dialogue, sometimes very intentionally goofy dialogue. And I think he's dialed into what the movie kind of needs from him in any given moment. I liked that the carnage throughout the film, you know, it was. The carnage present during the various kill sequences in the film, I found them to be satisfyingly gruesome as well as humorous. There were several moments where the monkey got genuine laughs out of me, mostly due to the great pair of performances from Theo James as these two twin brothers. Um, and, that being said, the film is also uneven in some respects. There are moments where the film does try to slow down and get a bit more serious, kind of hypothesize about the meaning of life, how humans reconcile with the fact that everything dies. And those moments, those themes did not quite work for me as well as the kind of violent and funny portions of the movie. I admire that the film tries to go for it and approach the topic of death with some sort of cerebral approach. The inevitability of death and the ways that people process that in their own ways, depending on how their mindset is. But I think that the excuse me, I think that the kind of meager runtime of the movie does not allow the film to kind of pay proper attention to all of its various kind of intellectual ambitions. The film runs just over 90 minutes, which is totally fine. I'm not against shorter run times for movies, so long as I feel like the story breathes properly during that amount of time. I've seen movies that are 3 hours long that feel like they could have been 90 minutes. I've seen movies that are 90 minutes long that feel like Lawrence of Arabia in a bad way. It all depends on the pacing of the movie. I think that the monkey would have been more successful at being funny and gory and thoughtful had it been able to slightly more um, be more leisurely when it comes to the runtime. The pacing was a little strange and not in a good way, if you ask me. It felt just a little bit rushed. And I also think that, there is a significant amount of the movie's comedy elements that rest on the shoulders of child actors who are not as up to the task as seasoned performers like Theo James or Tatiana Maslany. The movie is striking a very specific sort of dry comedic tone that the adult actors, I thought, were really, you know, capable of nailing with more consistency and oomph than kid actors. I do not want a Jake Lloyd in Star Wars situation to happen here just because I didn't care for these two individual children and their performances here. I don't think that that means they need to be, you know, harassed or disparaged or to never work again. I just thought that, it's a very difficult needle to thread with a tone like this with actors that young. Um, so I hope that that doesn't come across as too mean. Those are my honest thoughts. I just thought that, they weren't up to snuff compared to the more seasoned members of the cast. So I will say overall, though, that this film has kind of cemented Osgood Perkins for me as somebody who is notable enough where I don't plan to miss any of his new releases when they come to theaters. But as someone who I also never really so far vibe with on a 10 out of 10 level. I see so many movies and, I see so much that I like inside of films like Long Legs and the Monkey, but neither movie rises up to the level of like an instant modern classic to me. I do like that, like kind of alluded to earlier, I like that this marks another case of an interesting filmmaker trying something very unique and getting a wide theatrical release with that unique thing. The film is also a horror movie, so it does hold true to the kind of horror movie standard of costing not very much and making a solid chunk of change at the box office. So that's good. It's nice for kind of an injection of cash into the studio system, given all of the kind of ways in which the industry is imploding right now. Um, any sign that theaters are getting some much needed, cash flow is welcome for me, particularly as, lots of other big movies like Mickey 17 or Black Bag, those flopped elsewhere in multiplexes across the United States of America, which is pretty much a bummer. Um, I will say that I saved $8.19 on this ticket by using AMC A List. I say this not because I'm sponsored by AMC A List, but because I plan to compile my A List savings at the end of 1 year to tell you how much I have saved in that time. I think saving $8.19 on a ticket to the Monkey, saving that much to see a cool, interesting movie in the theater, totally worth it, even if the film did not fully work for me. So I guess where would the Monkey rank on my scale of A list, A amazing, A average, A abysmal, or needs to be A abolished if we're using cutesy AMC A list terms? Well, I think the Monkey is the definition of kind of like a gentleman's 3 out of 5, like a soft three. It has just enough going for it to recommend it to horror completionists and horror fans. For that reason, I will give it a nice, respectable average rating, kind of in the middle of the pack there. So, what do you think of The Monkey if you saw it? Is it a good adaptation? That's something I'm curious about. If you're familiar with the source material, is this a good adaptation of that source material? For example, much has been made about whether or not The Shining, the classic film, one of my favorite, probably favorite 5 movies ever made. Um, there are friends very close to me who dislike that film because it is a bad adaptation of the book. I saw The Shining before I read the book, so that's never been a problem for me. I've always preferred the film, but I'm curious to know if there are any monkey stands out there. Does this fit the bill as far as a good adaptation? Did you think this movie was a complete letdown compared to something like Longlegs, which played it a little straighter? I've also heard that from some, serious horror film nerds who thought the tone here was not quite what they were expecting, given how serious and dour Longlegs was. I know so many people who adore Longlegs. Where I thought it was just okay. So I think I would prefer the monkey over Longlegs on the whole. That's kind of just spitting off of the dome there. Maybe depending on the day that would change, but I'm curious to know what the general thoughts of the public are as it relates to that. But feel free to let me know the answer to any of those in the comments, all of those, none of those, whatever you want. I'm just happy that you're here. So feel free also to like this video and or subscribe to the channel for more thoughts on movies as they come out in theaters. Forgive me for maybe being a little bit slow to the draw on this one. Like I said, I just settled into a new living space, so I'm getting back into the swing of things. Until next time, though, thank you so much for watching. And until next time, please do not turn the keys of any old toy monkeys you see in the attic, even if the previous owner was Adam Scott. I know we all love him, but it's just not a safe bet. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.